Stimați telespectatori, mă bucur să vă am alături. Vă voi prezenta pe scurt subiectul videoclipului de astăzi, după care veți putea viziona traducerea sa în limba română. Victoria Nuland, fostă subsecretară de stat a SUA, a oferit recent detalii despre negocierile de pace de la Istanbul din anul 2022 între Rusia și Ucraina. În cadrul unui interviu cu jurnalistul rus, Mikhail Zigar, Nuland a confirmat implicarea SUA, Marii Britanii și a altor aliați occidentali în decizia Ucrainei de a nu semna acordul propus. Potrivit lui Nuland, negocierile au avut loc într-un context în care Rusia realiza că planul inițial de a cuceri rapid Kievul eșuase. La sfârșitul lui martie și începutul lui aprilie 2022, ambele părți aveau motive să exploreze o posibilă înțelegere. Rusia căuta să obțină ceva din situația în care se afla, în timp ce Ucraina era interesată să oprească războiul și să determine retragerea forțelor rusești. Nuland a subliniat că SUA nu a fost direct implicată în negocieri, oferind doar sprijin Ucrainei la cerere. Cu toate acestea, când ucrainenii au solicitat sfaturi cu privire la direcția în care se îndreptau negocierile, a devenit clar că acordul conținea clauze problematice. Iar acum urmează traducerea în limba română a videoclipului.
Treading water to wait and see.
And speaking about another negotiation process, Istanbul, 2022.
This is another Russian myth. Good grief.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
an urban legend. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where is the legend? What was true? Because there was a story first told by former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett that both sides were really close to the end, to the successful end of the negotiations, and then Prime Minister Boris Johnson interfered and stopped prevented Ukrainians from signing the deal. And then Ukrainian Representative Arahami kind of confirmed it. That yes, he said in an interview that there was some kind of advice from Boris Johnson to stop negotiating and to win this war militarily. Where is the myth? Where is the truth?
Well, look, I mean, only the negotiators know for sure because they were the ones in the room. But remember where we were. I think it was late March, early April, right, of 22. So Putin's dream that Kyiv would fall in 5 days, that he'd have control, was clearly not going to happen, and the Russian military was heavily bogged down and doing really stupid things like, 40 miles of open convoy and all of that kind of stuff. And they were starting to get pushed out of the north, etc., and it wasn't clear, how much he could hold. So Russia had an interest at that time in at least seeing what it could get. Ukraine obviously had an interest if they could stop the war and get Russia out. So this was something that was worked up. The Turks offered a venue. We were not in the room. We were actually not very much aware of what any kind of deal was. We just sort of said, look, we're here to support. If you want us to know more, know less, we're here. And we never were completely sure how empowered either negotiating team was, whether Putin really was ready to sign on to what his team had agreed to, and whether Zelensky was either. But relatively late in the game, the Ukrainians began asking for advice on where this thing was going. And it became clear to us, clear to the Brits, clear to others, that Putin's main condition was buried in an annex to this document that they were working on. Mm-hmm. And it included limits on the precise kinds of weapon systems that Ukraine could have after the deal, such that Ukraine would basically be neutered as a military force. And there were no similar constraints on Russia. Russia wasn't required to pull back. Russia wasn't required to have a buffer zone from the Ukrainian border, wasn't required to have the same constraints on its military facing Ukraine. And so people inside Ukraine and people outside Ukraine started asking questions about whether this was a good deal, and it was at that point that it fell apart. But I think that plenty of people, and perhaps Zelensky himself, were very suspicious that they were about to fall into a trap. And if Putin could have gotten that, completely neutered, demilitarized Ukraine for nothing, why wouldn't he take it,
Were you surprised with the first days of the war? Because there is the famous quote, we need ammunition, not right, that...
We need ammunition, not...
ammunition, not a ride. That's supposedly
I see.
Zelensky told to President Biden.
Yeah.
Was it a surprise for you that the Ukrainian resistance was so effective and the Ukrainians were so brave, and Zelensky did not plan to go to Lviv or to anywhere?
Well, first, as you remember, we first discovered the Russian military plan at the end of October of 21. And it was so massive and comprehensive that when we first started briefing the Ukrainians and everybody else and talking to Moscow about what we thought they were going to do, people didn't believe it. It was sort of incomprehensible that he would put 100,000 troops on the three sides of Ukraine. And then we steadily saw the plan implemented through December, January, and early February, that all of this stuff started to move. And we were really counseling the Ukrainians to take stronger defensive measures and to prepare their population that Putin might actually do this.
And Ukrainians didn't believe.
I think they'll all tell their own stories when, God help us, this awful chapter is over and they're truly free again. Some Ukrainians say that they didn't want to spook the population. Some Ukrainians say that they were making quiet preparation, but trying to do it in a low-key way. Some Ukrainians think that they could have been even more prepared. But I think a lot of us worried that with the amount of heavy metal that Russia was amassing on three sides, its cyber capabilities, its electromagnetic weapons, and all these kinds of things, the fact that the Ukrainians had very little air defense, even then, especially then, that Kyiv could fall in a matter of weeks. So it was enormously inspiring to see their bravery. But it also, and the fact that in every little village they fought, and that they were actually more prepared. I mean, if Russia had been able to get and hold Hostomel Airport, it might have been totally different, but Ukraine didn't allow that. But it was also really interesting to see how bad the Russian military was. I mean, in the United States, it really completely dispelled this myth of this massive superpower military that could roll across Europe anytime it felt like it. Just the strategy, the tactics, the hubris, the lack of coordination. That was interesting too.